Hey everyone, this is Bill Krieger from the Veterans Archives podcast, where we preserve and share the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really, anywhere you choose to get your podcast, you should be able to find us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media to help us reach more veterans and supporters. We are a nonprofit, and this service is completely free for veterans. Every story matters, and every voice deserves to be heard. Spread the word, honor our heroes, and join us on this mission. Follow, share, and tune in, because their story should never be forgotten. Learn more at veteransarchives.org. We'll see you there. Today is Thursday, April 10th. We're talking with Dave Bittel, who served in the United States Army. So good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon.
It's great to see you today.
Well, thank you. Good to see you.
Good to be seen, I think. Well, we'll start out pretty easy. When and where were you born?
I was born 1816 Vermont Avenue, Lansing, Michigan, December 7th, 1932.
So 9 full years before World War II broke out then, really?
Yeah, I was 9 on Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
I had a cousin up in Sheridan, and we were celebrating a mutual birthday. He had a December 7th. My uncle went over to get my grandmother to come and take care of his daughter, and my dad had gone up and beat him, and so he brought Grandma home, and
yeah. So what was it like growing up in Lansing at that time? What do you kind of remember about your childhood?
Oh, let me just tell you an experience I had.
All right.
I was 3 and a half. I walked up the corner of White Street in Vermont, and a man came by, and he said, "How would you like to go to the park and swing?" 3 and a half.
Right.
Oh, sounds like fun. So he took me over to the park. He said, "I'm going to go get my car." He said, "You wait here." And a little angel told me to get my tail home. I was only 3 and a half, but I had enough sense to sense what was going to happen. I just have a hunch I probably wouldn't be here today if I had waited for him to come back with the car.
Wow. Wow, at 3 years old, that's...
3 and a half.
Jeez.
I hadn't even gone to High Street yet until 4 and a half, so...
Uh-huh.
But he, I'll take you over and swing, and we'll have a good time. And it's funny, I taught a criminal justice program in the Lansing schools for about 20 years, and we talked about not going with strangers and submitting the authority that's been placed over you. And, you know, as I look back on it, my mom and dad probably should have told me to not go with a stranger, but back then we went to Stanton. My grandma lived in Stanton up near McBride.
Yeah.
And we didn't even lock the door. We drove up and drove through Ionia and went up the hill and made it. And
it was a safe time, or at least we thought it was.
Well, compared to now, I'll tell you what, it was paradise.
Right.
I hate to say it, but I would hate to be teaching today.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could take it. I had a kid tell me I didn't like him because he was black. Well, 2 days later, there was a race riot in Battle. And I'll never forget it because my daughter was born on the 21st of August of '59, and So anyway, we were in the car. We were downtown, and somebody started pounding on my window. You, S.O.B., get your out of the car. I'm going to beat the... I rolled the window. Mr. Bittel, I'm so sorry.
One of your students.
Yeah. Yeah, he and his brother... but I told them to grow up and go home, and they did.
Yeah. So they listened to you. At
They
least
did.
then, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had some thoughts. A 2-year-old, well, a 2-month-year-old in the car. What could they have done, for crying out loud?
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't have been pleasant, let's put it that way.
Right. That was some pretty tough times
Oh,
all over.
yeah, race riots were not uncommon. My uncle and aunt lived in Detroit, near Livernois and Finkel, and they had a race riot down there. They were dragging people out of the car and beating the crap out of them. And
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in between there, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah. So you.
that's right.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that happened between, the growing up. Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother. He was born in 21.
Okay.
The poor guy took organic chemistry in his junior year at Michigan State. Was the only B that he got in school, all the way through Eastern and
Wow.
Michigan State. And he was going to drop out of college because he was so embarrassed. The poor guy got a B. I said, gee, I got a B once, and it didn't faze me in the least. Of course, he failed to see the humor, but...
Right. Yeah. So he was, gosh, what, 12 years older than you?
Well, he was born in 21, and I was born in 32, 11 years.
Oh, yeah. So 11 years difference. So you really, didn't have a lot in common as you were growing
Not
up
really. Tom Sinus was part of the Sinus Dramus law firm that's still, I guess they're still in business, but he and my brother used to play chess every Saturday morning at the Union Building. And would you like to go and see Michigan State play today? Oh, love to. Well, here I was, probably, if he was 18 or 19,
you were
I wasn't very old.
Yeah, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, so well, anyway, I had to sit there for 2.5 or 3 hours while those two guys played chess. When I heard checkmate, I nearly wet my pants. But he took me to see Charlie Bachman coach and Dick Kippy, the All-American, play, and it was pretty exciting back then.
Oh, yeah.
But to keep yourself busy at that age, even with the grill, of course, I eventually worked out there while I was going to school and cleaned the cigarette smoke off the windows and mirrors and dry mopped the concourse and set up the parlors. And so it really, it made going to college a lot more pleasant.
Oh, yeah. Now, did you went to college after you got out of the military?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, is there anything you want to talk about with school prior to enlisting or prior to being drafted?
Well, I tried Michigan State right fresh out of high school.
Uh-huh.
And I discovered the billiard room down in the basement, and that seemed to be more fun than going to class. So I have to admit I didn't get a good start. Now, not bad enough to flunk out, but
right.
But I surely wasn't setting any world records, let's put it that way. So anyway, I got to the point in my life, well, there again, let's go the way you want to go, because I finally made up my mind that come hell or high water, I was going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were a veteran, you had two things in mind: get an education and get a job.
Right.
Not tap a keg a day and not all the social baloney. I never got involved in that.
Yeah.
I had a 7 to 10 class in, where was it? Berkey Hall. And I had a flat tire in the way, and I walked into class about 10 minutes late,
Mm-hmm.
and the instructor tried to welcome me, and he embarrassed me more than I'd ever been embarrassed in my lifetime. And for our final exam, we had an oral interview with him, and he said, "Do you remember the night you walked into class late and I embarrassed you?" I said, "Do I remember it?" I said, "How could I forget it?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'd been 18, I probably would have cried and walked out of the class. But I had other things in mind, and
well, you were older, you're more mature, you had some
just
time
a little
under your
bit of
belt,
maturity. And after being in the military, I thought the first two direct orders were negotiable. Once I found out they weren't, I got along a lot better.
Yeah.
I tried to change the Army, and they tried to change me, and I'll never...
So how did you, how old were you when you got drafted then?
Well, let's see, in 53, forward to 50, I would have been 21.
Okay. And so you weren't in school, or were you in school but your grades had dipped? How did that happen?
Oh, that, it was just, well, one quarter,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't long, and don't ask me why I wasn't more serious about school. It's just one of those things that I watched my brother do his calculus every night at 10:30 before he went to bed, and
Mm-hmm.
the poor guy got to be in organic chemistry, and well, I told him I got a B once, and it didn't faze me in the least. So,
Right. So where'd you go to basic training at?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Okay. And was this in the summertime?
Yes.
So it was warm there.
Well, yeah. Warm, red clay, and we took a forced march, 12 miles one way. 120 in the shade with no shade. There were 225 of us in our outfit, D of the 231st. And so anyway, we went on the march, and out of 225, 40 of us finished. And I was one of the 40 that finished. Don't ask me why. I did. A little bit of pride, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, we had two guys that tried to fall out 4 or 5 times, and a deuce and a half went by, and the field first had a stick about, well, and if you dropped out, he jabbed you in the ribs a couple of times, and, well, you resumed your marching, even though you didn't either feel like you could or shouldn't.
Right.
To make a long story short, as I say, I made it. And Well, the one guy died when he turned the company straight from a cooked brain. The other guy died later that night. Bittel, yeah. Aren't you from Michigan? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, how would you like to go to Flint and talk to so-and-so's parents? And I said, I'd love to. Well, we better not send you then. I said, that's probably the wisest decision you made. Because I would have told them, well, here they tried to fall out for now. Don't get me wrong. I felt like falling out too,
Right.
But I had just enough pride. By golly, I was going to make it one way or another.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to have a stick jabbed in my ribs to keep me going either.
Yeah. Well, so you were in basic training, and then did you go to your schooling, your
Okay.
MOS school after that, or?
When I finished basic training, we waited for our orders, and I thought it would be Korea because I was an A1 profile and tested pretty well. And it's funny, we went to Detroit and had our exam, and we had two lines. One line they could spell and pronounce their names, and the other line that couldn't. I said, these guys aren't going to Korea, are they? And no comment. Well, to make a long story short, guess who went to Korea?
All the guys that couldn't spell their names.
Yeah, and those that could, but now there again, I got my orders, and it was from not Fort Custer, oh my gosh, the Federal Center right there in Battle Creek.
Oh, Fort Custer Training Center there.
No, that was a ways away from it. This was Percy Jones Hospital. So I had an exciting experience with that. The guys that I was stationed with weren't too impressed when they found out that I was going to Battle Creek, 48 miles from home, and
right.
They were going to Fort Lewis, Washington for a couple of weeks and going home and on their way to Korea and probably not coming back. Well, when they found where I was going, they were so impressed that they took my footlocker, all of my clothes, and took them out in the woods and hid them. I had a feeling they were a little bitter.
Oh, yeah.
And there again, if I were going to go to Korea, and they wanted to send me to leadership school, which you were a head man on a rifle team. There was an 8-man rifle team, and they gave you a BAR and a wide helmet, and you're the lead man, and you're out in front. And oh my gosh, officer, well, anyway, some real experiences that would have been pleasant. But I said, what's the catch? Well, the life expectancy of the lead man on a rifle team is 90 seconds. I said, you know what? I think I've changed my mind. I don't think I'll go.
Yeah.
And it probably saved my life, or it could have.
Right. So what did you do at Percy Jones then?
I mothballed all the equipment because we were getting rid of Percy Jones. It was becoming the Federal Center there in Battle Creek.
Oh, okay.
So I put Cosmoline on all of the equipment and called all the hospitals and asked them whether they needed whatever we had. And I think the thing that hurt me more than anything, we had an X-ray cable. They were about 4 inches in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to call Percy Jones and, 5 or 6 of the Army hospitals, and none of them needed a X-ray machine. And I thought to myself, well, in order to get rid of the X-ray cable or the X-ray machine,
Mm-hmm.
they had to put it in salvage, and I had to saw that thing in two with a hacksaw. And I thought to myself, what a waste.
Yeah.
But there again, it took me a while to wake up, but when they gave me this order, I just felt like I had to do it.
Right.
So I was there 6 months, and I got some new orders for Fitzsimmons Army Hospital out in Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
As the chaplain's assistant there in Aurora, where all of the rascals are breaking in, and I'll tell you. Well, anyway.
Yeah. So you're out in Aurora, Colorado now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fitzsimmons. Well, this was my brother and my dad. My dad was in World War I. My brother made it through Normandy. They were going to commission him in the Navy and found out he had asthma, so the Navy wouldn't take him. So they handed him a flamethrower and sent him over into Normandy, and he made it through.
Wow.
My dad rode a horseback during World War I.
So you have a family history of being in the military then?
Oh, yeah. It was in the family.
Yeah, definitely. So you, how long were you at Fitzsimmons then?
I went there January 1st of 54. So, not quite a year.
Okay.
But I showed Moody Science films up on the floors and witnessed to the troops and kept the chapel. There's a picture. Let me see here.
Of this is the chapel right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Okay. So I kept that clean and was responsible for the choir. And as I say, showed Moody Science films up on the floors there at the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And I have to admit, it was, good duty.
Yeah.
It sure beat Korea, so.
Yeah. And then where did you go after Fitzsimmons?
Home.
So you got discharged from there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now was your family still here in Lansing then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What was it like coming home?
Exciting. I love my mom. Well, if you had an alcoholic father like I did, my mother and I were like this. I mean, she stayed home and took care of me every day, and I don't mean to be unkind, but when you have to take your dad on a heads bar 2 or 3 times out of the month, it wasn't a lot of fun.
No, that had to be really hard.
Well, I have to say this, that when I was 12, I mixed apple leaves and tobacco in a pipe. My mother walked through the front door and she said, David Claude, my dad's name was Claude. David Claude, I want to see you in my bedroom. Well, I didn't have to ask her what she meant because she had a yardstick in there, not one of those little flimsy ones, but one about like this. And I still got a slight indentation in my left cheek that's been there for quite a while. But guess what? I haven't smoked since.
Right.
When I was 9, we were up in Stanton with my grandparents. And my grandfather asked me if I wanted to taste a beer. And I said, yeah, I guess. Well, I took it and spit it out. That's the last time I drank, too. So I'm a slow learner, but I learned a few things from life's experiences that encouraged me to be a little bit more responsible and, well, clean cut, let's put it that way.
Right. Don't do things you shouldn't be doing.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So after you got home, is that when you went to seminary then? What did you do between?
Let's see, I went to seminary before I went to college.
Yeah. In 56, you went to seminary, right?
Yeah. In Chicago. 40 West.
So that'd have been on Washington Boulevard.
Washington Boulevard. Yep. Yeah, I remember it well. We used to meet our wives at the dorm every night at 6:15 to make sure they made it in safely. It was Lake Street L was 1 block north and Madison Avenue was 2 blocks south. We weren't in a real good area of Chicago.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine, Fred Raft, he was a guard downtown, and he got out of work at 2:30. Was getting off the L, and 3 guys accosted him, wanted to steal from him, and probably, I don't know what they would have done to him, but anyway, he had his books in a folder.
Yeah.
And he started to swing those around. He knocked 2 of them off the train rail, and they kind of took the message that maybe they better leave him alone. Well, he feared for his life for a long time. He just didn't figure he'd get away with that. But he did.
Yeah, that'll put some fear into you for sure.
Oh, in that area, I remember I spoke at the mission, the gospel mission there on Madison Avenue one night, and it seated 500 people. And they all were alcoholics. You walked in and you got a cheap drunk, whether you wanted to or not. But they couldn't eat until they listened to the sermon. So I had a captive audience. And so I spoke and left. And, well, I was impressed. I wasn't impressed with the alcohol because I'd grown up with it. And
yeah. Some pretty bad memories, too, about that.
Well, my brother had a chance to go to well, anyway, he ended up going to Seagram 7 Crown. He had a chance to go to Midland Dow.
Okay.
As a chemist. And he had a chance to go to Seagram 7 Crown of Lawrenceburg, Indiana, as a chemist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had 9 kids. He knew how to make kids. But the problem was that he sampled the product, destroyed his marriage, destroyed his family. After having an alcoholic father, he has a chance to go to Midland Hall, and he chose Seagram 7 Crown. Now, my brother was brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, listeners, we need your help to keep the Veterans Archives podcast going. We're a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes, and we provide this service completely free to veterans. Your support helps us record, share, and archive these incredible stories so future generations never forget the sacrifices made for our freedom. Every donation, big or small, makes a difference. Visit veteransarchives.org to contribute today. Help us honor their service by ensuring their voices are heard. And thank you for your support, and thank you to all the veterans who have served our country.
But not smart. No, I would have had more sense than that, but there again, obviously he felt the need to drain the sorrows, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But after having an alcoholic father, he should have learned a few things, but obviously it must have looked more attractive to him than it did to me.
Yeah, I think people in that situation go one of two ways. They either stay away from it or they give into it, right?
Jim Stiles, a guy in our church, gave me a book. We were in Spuds one morning. The youngest son of an alcoholic father has a 90% chance of becoming an alcoholic. And I wasn't interested in drinking, but I read that book and I said, no, I said, I'm not going to run into the same thing that the family ran into. So, So I made a choice. And I'm not sorry. No. I was in the Army. I was ready to get out, and a girl I was writing called me and said, Dave, your dad became a Christian yesterday and doesn't drink anymore. And I told you what I said, that, but does he drink any less? And the last 23 years of his life, he didn't drink and didn't smoke. Now, he still died of emphysema he smoked cools inside of the house. My mom died of lung cancer. To watch your mom die of lung cancer, there's nothing any more devastating than watching that, I'll tell you. She was in constant pain and complained, and you tried to soothe her, but you just loved her and she loved you, and that was about the extent of it.
It's all you could do at that point, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you left seminary then, though, after about a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One year I went to seminary.
Did you just decide that wasn't the life for you, or what?
Well, no, I was going to go to Michigan State. I didn't have my undergraduate degree, so it was going to be 7 years of schooling.
Okay.
And otherwise it's 4, with your college. And so...
So you had just reached the point where you had to get your degree before you could...
I had to get a degree before I could do what I wanted to do. And
okay.
After the second quarter, I took a writing class. That instructor got up and gave the introduction to this writing class, and English had never been one of my favorites, but I took Hazel Lowry at Eastern and World Lit, and we had Beowulf and Catcher in the Rye, and in fact, I thought Crimson Letter was a dirty book, so I took it home and hid it under my pillow. Well, guess where it was when I got home that night? On the pillow. My mother wasn't as naive as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, moms figure us out pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's about it.
Yeah. So you got into Michigan State then? And
Yeah, I got into Michigan State, and I tried to get my classes, and I got everything but algebra 2 or something or other, and I couldn't get it. And I tried for a couple of hours, and I was ready to go home and give the whole mess up and say, too bad. And there was a tower guard. She was fairly decent looking. She said, you know what? I think I can get you an algebra class. I said, would you? Yes. So she did. So I can thank her for quite a few things. Because had I not been able to get it,
yeah, we'd be having a whole different conversation.
oh,
wouldn't we?
yeah, we would have, because I probably would have gone home and said, well, I made my effort, but it didn't work.
Yeah. But instead, you got your classes, and how was college for you? Did it?
It was, I'll tell you, when you got new books, tuition, and $150 a month spending money, it wasn't a bad deal, really.
Right. The world's your oyster at that point, right?
Well, when I got my job there in Battle Creek at $4,700, I took a pay cut, so
Yeah.
that tells you something about what the GI Bill was worth. But to get new books, get your tuition paid, I could have gotten room and board, but
Yeah.
I lived at home, and that was fine.
Yeah. And how long did you go to Michigan State? Was that 4 years?
Yeah,
So you would have graduated what, like in 1959?
59.
Okay. And then your first teaching job. So let me ask you this. You went to Michigan State and you got your degree, and you never went back to seminary then?
No,
Right. You became a teacher.
I became a teacher. I had my mind, I student taught at Grand Rapids Central, and Grand Rapids, it makes sense, Grand Rapids Central.
Right.
And so anyway, I got job offers, and one of them was Grand Ledge, and I was going to take it because it was close to my mom and dad, and they were up in age, and
Yeah.
I thought it'd be kind of nice to be there and take care of them. But when Battle Creek called me a couple of weeks later and offered me $700 more with a baby coming, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to take it.
Now, when did you get married?
June 8th of 56.
Okay, so you've been married for a couple of years then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you meet your wife?
She went to Penn Avenue Baptist Church.
Uh-huh.
When we got married, her mom lost her husband when Sandra was 9, and she lived with us for 40 and a half years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, but believe it or not, in 40 years we had one disagreement. She wanted to discipline the kids, and I told her, time out. I said, If mom and dad are home, they'll take care of the discipline. If you're babysitting for them and they need something, then you give it to them,
Right.
So anyway.
Well, that's pretty incredible, though. In 40 years, just one disagreement. That's a pretty good track record.
Oh my gosh,
That's unheard of.
Yeah, it's a miracle, really. I had a guy down in Florida. We went there, I think, in 2007 or something. Something like that. And anyway, he said he'd been married for 4 years and never had a disagreement with his wife. And, well, after getting to know him a little bit, I don't know whether he argued or not, but you talk about unbelievable or not believable.
Well, I think if you're married and you don't get in a disagreement once in a while, you're probably not communicating.
Well, my wife's not always right, but she's never been wrong.
Yes. Yes, that's true. That's true. You have to be a smart man to stay married as long as you've been married. So you took your first teaching job you initially were at Grand Ledge, and then this...
No, I went to Grand Ledge, and they offered me a job.
Oh, they made this offer, right. But then you got
But then 2 weeks later, I got a call from Battle Creek offering me $700 more than what Grand Ledge was willing to pay me. So I went to see... who was there? Superintendent at Grand Ledge. Well, anyway, he practically hugged me. He said, if they offered me $500 more next year, I'd probably take it.
Yeah.
So he completely let me break contract and go to Battle Creek, which I thought was more than generous because he didn't have to.
Right. Right. He allowed you to take care of your family, though, so that was good.
Yeah. And really, we got into a good church, got a new home there. We lived in our Army housing for about a year. Cement slab, no basement.
Basic shelter, right?
That's about it.
Yeah. Well, and how long were you at Battle Creek then? How long did you teach there?
5 years.
Okay.
And then I got my master's in counseling in Petersburg, Michigan. The superintendent called me and he said, "I'd like you to be the guidance instructor for grades kindergarten through 12. Are you interested?" Well, I had a good church and good home, and I thought about it, but I said, you know what? I'm interested. So we went to Petersburg, right next to Deerfield, where Danny Thomas was raised.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, St. Jude.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He was...
Oh, yeah.
He was like their ambassador. He was the guy.
Yeah.
And his daughter Marlo Thomas kind of took over for that after he stopped.
Yeah, Marlo was daughter.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it can jerk some tears.
Yeah.
So it was a little boring, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And it was different though, right? Because you weren't teaching now. Now you were basically supervising the staff. Is that what you did?
I taught 7th grade.
Okay.
For 5 years in Battle Creek. Right. I had 6 classes of 33 kids. I'll tell you an experience I had with Phil Handy. I had a seventh grader that couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't spell, and couldn't do math. Other than that, he was a whiz.
Good student, other than that. Yeah.
Well, I got the job down in Petersburg, about 18 miles from Toledo, off from 23.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I had to go back to Battle Creek and get the house ready to sell. So I got a friend of mine, he and I helped me paint it, and we got it ready to sell. And it sold right away, which I wasn't surprised. But so anyway, the third day we worked. I went to the bank, and it was downtown on the corner of Capitol and Michigan Avenue there in Battle Creek. So I thought I'd walk. What's the sense of taking a car for 8 blocks or whatever?
Right.
So all at once, this big black kid comes up and, "Are you Mr. Bittel?" I said, "Yeah, I have been for quite a while." He said, "Do you know who I am?" Well, I had him in 7th grade when he was about 3'6" and weighed 115 pounds. That day he was about 6 feet and weighed 200 pounds.
He's a little bigger.
Just a little.
Yeah.
He said, "You know who I am?" And I said, "No, I don't have the..." "I'm Phil Handy." I said, "Phil Handy? Didn't I have you in 7th grade?" He said, "Yeah, Mr. Battelle, I've been wanting to talk to you. You changed my life." He said, "I finally decided I wanted to amount to something. You were helpful in getting me to do that." He said, "You know what I did?" I said, "No. I went to Western Michigan University, got my degree in finance, and I'm the president of the Michigan National Bank downtown." And I grabbed him and hugged him. And
Yeah. You put him on a different path than he was on, that's for sure.
Well, I was in Fitzsimmons, Panera's one morning. A black lady walked in and came over and grabbed me and hugged me. And I said, "You know, this doesn't happen very often." She said, "Well, do you know who I am?" And I said, "I don't have the foggiest." "Well, I had you back in 1961, which would have been my 2nd year of teaching."
Uh-huh.
I said, "You remember me from then?" She said, "Mr. Bittel, how could I forget you?" And there again, when you teach, you see the immediate, but you very seldom see the long term. So you don't really see the accomplishments that take place after a person decides to get with it and mature. And
You sowed some seeds and they grew. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So you get your house all fixed up and ready to sell.
Oh, yeah. Uncle, what was his name?
So you were working down in, you said Petersburg? Michigan?
Petersburg.
Yeah, Petersburg. So
Right next to
Deerfield.
Yeah, Deerfield.
And how long were you in Petersburg?
We came back to Lansing in '66, so. But my dad was interesting, to say the least, and I figured I'd better get back. And so I sent out fielders, and Okemos offered me a job, and Walter French offered me a job. Well, if all things were equal, I would have chosen Okemos because I know it's more blue collar or
White
collar.
Yeah.
But something just told me that I should choose Walter French. And well, I had the police program for 20 years, taught human growth and development for about 5 years. Work boy stayed out at Brody for 40 years. So I didn't sit around much.
No, you were one of the first men to teach human growth and development, weren't you?
Oh, I was the only.
You were the only man to teach that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I was, yep.
Yeah, that's.
And I thought, let me think about it, because I'd heard so many bad experiences.
Right.
But you know what? I taught it for 5 years and counseled the other half day. And I taught it in good taste.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Hansen was the teacher over at West Junior. I went into his classroom and was teaching growth and development. One of the boys said, by the way, can you have sex after 60? I said, well, I'd like to answer that, but I'm not that old yet, but I'll bet you Mr. Hansen could answer that. And Mr. Hansen was usually full of it clear up to his ears. He just about dropped us.
I'll bet. Oh my gosh. So you were in the Lansing School District for quite a while then.
31 years.
My gosh. And you taught at
Walter French, Otto, Administration Building downtown, Everett, and Sexton.
You never taught at Dwight Rich though.
Well, I had the police programs and growth and development, so I traveled really to all those schools.
Because I noticed you named almost every school in Lansing, but not Dwight Rich. So I was just curious if you taught there.
Oh, no, that's where Neil Hansen was.
Oh, is that where you got asked that question? Gosh. So this whole time you're teaching, though, you're also raising a family. And
oh, yeah.
How many children did you have?
3.
3. Tell me a little bit about them?
Okay. I had 2 girls and a boy. My last one was my oldest daughter was born in 59. I had a daughter born in 62, and Todd was born in 63. So
sort of just one right after the other then.
Well, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, and what did they? What did they end up doing?
Well,
becoming.
I wish I could tell you the good news about him, but when he was in high school, he was cutting through there by Waverly High School and fell and hit his head and got a brain tumor.
Oh.
And he struggled most of his life since then.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Karen, let's see, she worked at
Did any of your kids go into teaching at all?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They probably saw me and said, gee, why would I want to do that? No, yeah. I have to admit, we go to the South Baptist and South Church.
Oh, they took Baptist out of the name, didn't they? It's South Church now. Yep. Yeah, my kids used to go to the summer a Bible school.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, when they were little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've been going there for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like to, after 31 years of teaching, to retire?
I was scared to death.
Uh-huh.
And I had a minor sinus infection. So I went to my doctor, and he's in with another doctor. And he recommended augmentin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know I was allergic to it, but it oxidized my liver. I lost 14 pounds, had hives all over my body. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I wasn't afraid I was going to die. I was afraid I was going to live. And my principal called me in and he said, "Are you sure you want to keep teaching?" And I had 31 years. I said, "Gee, I want to go 35. Well, what's the big deal?" So when we talked, he convinced me that it was time.
Yeah.
When you get that near permanence, I'll tell you, I lost 14 pounds. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The funny thing about it is I was working at the student services downtown with Pat Farrell, Pat Isom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you missed 7 days of work, you had to bring a doctor's excuse. So I walked in with the doctor's excuse, and Pat Isom took it, tore it in two, said, "If you say you're sick, I know you are."
Because you're an honest man, and they knew that. That's pretty incredible.
Well, I have to admit that. And what was the big deal about having 35 years? Because I bought 2.4 years of military, and
Yeah.
I worked at the alumni relations office out in the Union Building up on the 4th floor. We sent out mailings to
All the
graduates.
Yeah.
So anyway, I decided that was it. So
did you do anything after that?
I was a security guard at East Lansing High School, Waverly Junior High, the library and museum downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I worked Players Club, the golf course out on Canal. So I didn't sit around.
Oh no. And how long did you work there?
I don't. Where now? The Players Club. I was there 5 years.
Okay.
And down to the museum and library, I was there about 5 years too. So,
Okay. So about 10 years altogether.
Yeah.
Doing that. Yeah.
When you add that to 31 years of military and, well, even Boy State, I loved that program, and that was 40 years. So I didn't sit around.
No. It sounds like you kept pretty busy.
Well, I had a paper out. I got it when I was 9, gave it up when I was 18.
Yeah.
I had to collect every week, and whether they paid me or not, I still had to go to the Journal and pay my paper bill. And So I learned a few things about people.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple that didn't want to pay me when I would go there. I'd have to go on a Sunday to, how much did you say it was? And it went all the way up to 35 cents.
Yeah.
Well, and they'd reach their hand in their pocket and hand me 35 cents, and I'd punch the card, and I thought to myself, I said, whether you pay me or not, I have to go to the Journal every Saturday morning and pay my paper bill. Well, how much did you say it was? 35 cents. And they'd reach their hand in their pocket and hand me 35 cents, and I'd punch their card, and I...
Yeah. I remember I had a black book with two rings on it.
Yeah.
And all my customers were in there. And then
Yeah.
you had a white card for Saturday and Sunday. You had a green card for Sunday only. And then you had like a yellow card or something for people who took it all week.
Well, I remember Sundays, the papers were about like this, and you had to fold 118 of those things, and
went through a lot of rubber bands back in those days.
Well, I didn't know whether you knew anybody on Vermont Street or not.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Christopher was in my class. He lived there. Dwayne Evans, he lived there. Louise Drooping, she lived there. Viola Dane, she lived right there. Bob and Eddie Schroeder, they lived there. So I delivered papers for close to 9 years.
Yeah.
And my friend Johnson, he said, how would you like to come and pitch for my 10th grade baseball team? I said, boy, I'd love to, but I hate to give up my paper out. So I kept my paper out.
Uh-huh.
I figured, well...
You got your priorities, right?
Well, he kind of put me through the paces, so I figured it wouldn't hurt me to
Right.
do the same.
Give a little bit back.
But I'll tell you, once I came back to Lansing in '66, every time he saw me, he made a big deal out of it. Trying to think who was the principal at Eastern. Not him, but Eleanor. Ellie Dorsum.
Yes, Miss Dorsum.
Yeah.
I remember Miss Dorsum. I think she taught English at Pattongill for a while, too.
She might have.
Boy, her and my sister used to lock horns all the time.
Well,
Miss Dorsum was no joke.
Well, she was a good friend of mine. She grew up there in Vermont Street, and she said, Dave, I want you to be a counselor at Eastern, but I've got to have a female. I said, well, I don't qualify.
Right. That doesn't work. Oh, my goodness. Wow. I haven't heard her name in a long time.
Ellie Dorson.
Yeah. 20 years.
Tom Fox, I think, he was at Everett. Irvin was there the couple of years I was there.
Yeah. My cousin went to school with Irvin Johnson.
I walked into the mall one day, and Mickey, his wife, I didn't know her from Adam, but she said, would you help me pick out a shirt for Irvin? And yeah, I guess so. Well, I picked out his shirt, and he even liked it, so.
There's your claim to fame right there. Right there. Well, we've talked a lot about your family and your career and growing up and getting to where you're at today. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to mention or like to talk about?
I was on Battelle's board, church board, for 12 years. But I think I'm about as proud of Boy State as anything that I did, other than the military. My kids are proud of their dad that he was in the military. Well, my dad, let's see, he went in 14, got out in 19. Well, right at the end of World War I, he wanted to keep his horse, and they wouldn't let him. But he wouldn't talk to me about his experiences.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't have the foggiest idea what my dad did. I know he rode a horse, and that's... I know my brother said he'd never seen so many dead bodies in all his life when he went to Normandy, so...
Yeah, I'm sure they both had some pretty rough experiences.
I'm sure they did.
Neither one of those wars were easy to fight.
Yeah, my dad, I'm sure if it had all been pleasant, he would have talked to me about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought to myself, gee, Battelle, point man on rifle team and OCS and promotions, and I said, yeah, and 4 bullet holes in my forehead when I come in the train station down on Washington Avenue. Oh, doesn't he look good? Yeah. I said, no, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a smart decision on your point.
Well, 92nd.
Yeah, that's not very long.
You know, Missouri had their share of snakes, a lot of cotton rattlers.
Mm-hmm.
But the...
yeah, and Fort Leonard Wood had its fair share of snakes, that's for sure.
What was the name
Was
of
it Diamondback or Cottonmouth or Water Moccasin?
No, it was... we had a couple of guys that we were into combat in cities at night, and they went into a trench and met 2 friends in there. They were cottonmouth rattlers. There again, you had 90 seconds to take care of it, or you were a goner.
Right.
It was only about 2 feet long, but deadly.
Mm-hmm. So did you encounter one of those while you were there?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay. They just talked about it?
Yeah. I didn't even care to.
I can't say that I blame you at all. Well, I think, as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I got one more question to ask you.
Uh-oh.
And
I've heard that story before.
Yeah, just one more. So the question is, when someone's listening to your story years from now, what message would you like to leave for people?
That the Lord is going to direct you where he wants you. Because so many times I had guys that I were working with that went someplace else, and they kept me there or sent me someplace else. So I've been a Christian for a long time. I just feel that Lord knows best, and he puts you in the direction where he wants you and keeps you there.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for taking time out this afternoon to talk with me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. I had no idea what we were getting into. But
Well, here we are.
well, I have to admit that when I look back at the experiences that happened in my life, the military was one that was probably the most important. You know, when you figure it pays for 5 years of schooling and it allows you to teach for 31 years and get a pension every month and Social Security and security for the rest of your life, and what complaints can you have?
Yeah.
And if I hadn't liked it, I'm just the kind that wouldn't have kept it.
Mm-hmm. That's a wrap for this episode of the Veterans Archives podcast. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen and honor the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Don't forget, you can catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream past episodes anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and as I've said before, any place you can find a podcast, you can find the Veterans Archives podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share our content on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and across all social media. Every share helps us reach more people and preserve more stories. The Veterans Archives podcast is a nonprofit initiative, and our mission is simple: to give veterans a voice and ensure their stories are never forgotten. This service is completely free for veterans because their sacrifices deserve to be recognized and remembered. You want to help? Follow us, spread the word, and if you know a veteran with a story to tell, send them our way. Visit us at veteransarchives.org to learn more about how you can get involved. Thanks again for tuning in, and most importantly, thank you to all the veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice. Until next time, take care, and we will see you on the next episode of the Veterans Archives podcast.